I definitely didn't think I would be able to get where I am now. There's no way I could have planned it. I did have this underlying faith of if I'm not making a ton of money and at least I'm doing what I want to be doing. And that to me is more important than making the money and feeling like I'm out of alignment. Really trusting that if I just lead from the heart and am open and helpful and sharing as much as I can, that it's going to pay off in the end.
Yeah, no one is you. Giving ourselves permission to reframe what it means to be quote unquote productive. It wasn't about softening and not doing anything. It was about only doing what mattered and leaving the rest.
Money isn't everything. It doesn't buy that feeling of euphoria that you think it might.
Based in Nashville, Tennessee, Kayce Laine is a certified sound, crystal, and Reiki practitioner. And with a bachelor's in music and a lifelong passion for music, she ultimately discovered the transformative power of vibrational healing, and she now teaches and trains practitioners worldwide. She's shattered stereotypes and created a very lucrative career out of being what I like to call a spiritual entrepreneur. And her impressive client list includes TikTok, Soho House, Lululemon, the Recording Academy's Music Cares, and more. I cannot wait to share some of her lessons with you. Welcome to the show, Kayce Laine.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
I'm so glad you're here, and we get to dive deeper into this conversation. You and I have chatted in the DMs and at events and things of that nature, but today I'm just excited to go a little deeper with you and talk about what it's like to be a full-time sound healer and to be making the impact you're making and feel so aligned with your obvious talents and passions. But before we get started, I would like to ask you a little favor.
Yes, please.
Can you just give us a cue for our breath? Just
oh my gosh,
a moment.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
If you are able to close your eyes, I would suggest doing that. And if you want to place a hand on your belly and a hand on your heart, just to kind of check in and notice where your breath is expanding your body. And then start to slowly bring more and more expansion into that belly space. We'll do 3 breaths together. Exhaling all of the air out real gently through the mouth. And then inhale in through the nose, filling up that belly space. And exhaling out through the mouth. Do 2 more just like that. Inhaling belly, rib cage, and exhale. Last one all together. Biggest breath yet, filling the belly, the rib cage, the chest. And then exhale. Let everything go. Needed that.
So good. I needed that too. I just think it's so beautiful. And I'm such a big proponent of our breath and the power of our breath. And it's something I think I didn't fully understand. Well, I know I didn't fully understand until I went through yoga teacher training back in 2018, 2018. And really got to understand how powerful our breath is and how much ever since then I've noticed how much I use it. And I tell a funny little story, but when I started getting Botox around that same time, my injector, Elizabeth, was like, "You do yoga, don't you?" Because she was like, just intuitively, you just started to slow your breath down and take bigger inhales and bigger exhales. And I do it all the time when I know I'm in a situation where I might get stressed. And yes, needles kind of stress me out. Yeah, so totally. I just think it's so beautiful. And I'm so glad we can start with that with you because I think it's a great foundation.
Yeah, and if you want to level it up even more, you can hum on the exhale.
What?
Because humming has tons of amazing effects on our body. And it's creating a vibration in your body and relaxes you even more. So let that be your next exercise.
Okay, trying that next.
I'm like the one humming on the plane whenever there's turbulence. I'm like,
I love it.
It really helps. Not kidding.
It probably helps the people around you too. Right? They're hearing it and I love it. Okay. You've been a lifelong musician, and I also happen to know that you come from a musical family.
I do.
So before you discovered sound healing, obviously music was important to you. Tell me a little bit about the foundation that music had in your life at an early age and how that translated into obviously where we are now.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family I'm one of 4 girls, and my dad was and still is a full-time musician. So I grew up with him teaching private guitar lessons at the house all day, then going to the gigs at night. And, eventually they could kind of hear that I had some pitch. And when I was about 6 years old, I started singing with my dad. And so I would go to the gigs and they would bribe me with ice cream to like get up and sing a song. And so I would do it, and it kind of progressed, you know, as an early teen. I was doing a couple more. I would like sing my Dixie Chicks and my Shania Twain with him. And meanwhile, I was also really drawn to the piano. That was always my instrument I was most into. So I was taking piano lessons, doing classical music, and then singing with him. And then eventually as a teenager, I started like getting into like, you know, the Vanessa Carlton, Tori Amos, Sarah McLachlan world, Ben Folds, huge. So playing piano and singing and doing a bunch of songs, and eventually started playing my own gigs once I could drive, going to the bars and setting up my stuff. And I played all through college as well, and ended up moving to New York straight out of college to be a musician there. And that was a whole journey.
And so then at what point in time in that whole situation, well, first of all, before we move on to the next stage, I'm sure I know the answer, but I'd love for you to tell us, like, was music healing for you? Was it therapeutic for you? Was there always something where you thought there might be something bigger than just this is entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, I knew that I loved doing it, and I knew that I touched people with my voice who would come to the gigs and cry, and, you know, I would cry maybe, but I don't think I really put it together of how much it was healing me until a couple chapters later moved to Nashville and stopped doing it when I got my first and last day job, and realized how much of my emotion and how much of my, you know, just processing of all the things in life I was getting out through just singing. And when I put the lid on that for, you know, a year or more, it was like all of this energy was like bottled up, and I realized like I have to sing for my own mental health. It's like required. So even if I'm not doing it as a living, it has to be plugged into my thing. Even if it's like, you know, the thing I did this weekend where it was very laid back. I did 3 songs, but like healed me. I felt so happy. It was so good to like hear my voice. You can probably hear a little bit of raspiness in my voice. I lost it earlier this month and it's slowly coming back. But yeah, it's one of those things, I think, when I now in the spiritual world talking about like our throat chakra, and I encourage people so much. I mean, there's so many layers to that throat chakra energy, and it's very powerful. And people who have, you know, not spoken, I mean, you use your voice in such a way, like, can you imagine not doing that? It would totally throw you off in more ways than you could probably imagine. So yeah, it took me some time to really understand the full scale of that connection there, but I knew there was something there. Yeah.
So then fast forward, and obviously you started to understand sound healing and vibrational therapy and other things. So for someone listening who's like, I have no idea what that means, what is sound healing?
Yeah, so one of my favorite ways to explain like, well, what a sound bath or sound healing is to think about the way our bodies just naturally respond to sound. We have such a primal relationship between our nervous system and our sense of hearing. Our sense of hearing is what like shows us a threat is coming, or like, you know, we hear our alarm go off in the morning and we immediately get into like, you know, fight or flight, you know, it triggers all that cortisol. And so we have all these triggers throughout the day that like get our body into that fight or flight state in various degrees, even if it's like, you know, your email sound or your phone going off or whatever, like there's a reaction in your body. And what we do in a sound bath or with sound healing is we're working with instruments that are kind of designed to relax the body and work with that relationship in the opposite way, bring a little balance to that. So it's something I think is really important for people to do. And then there's tons of science behind it as far as like, you know, entrainment and, you know, laws of resonance, where we're actually able to shift our body's own vibrations, you know, as beings, everything is vibration, right? And so you're actually able to manipulate the vibrations of your body with sounds that are in resonance with it. So there's so much to it that it's honestly, that's what I do in my 2-day workshops, where I pretty much talk about it the whole days, because it's a lot to go into. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is like, it's just a good stress relief. Like,
who doesn't need some stress relief?
literally everyone. So it's honestly, it's part of why I think there's, so much room for it here right now.
Yeah. And I have a good friend who, for her baby shower, that's what we did. We had a sound bath together, and it was so beautiful. And I think for some people, when they have been in that fight or flight mode for so long, the concept of lying down, closing your eyes, and just listening can feel almost triggering, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I've seen lots of sound bath experiences where people have tears on their eyes, and, there's emotions that come up. It's a lot like yin yoga in that way as well. I would love to know if you just have like a powerful transformational story that you've experienced, leading a sound bath where someone really shared with you afterwards what it brought up for them or how it healed them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those, and one that has really stuck out to me, it was very interesting. So I've worked with a mental health facility and detox center here in town where I do like bi-weekly sound baths for their clients. And this one day at this detox house, actually it is a house, but I'm thinking about my friend's place. It's called Detox House. At this detox facility. I had this man come in, and most of the time with those situations, no one's ever experienced this before. And this guy came in and he laid down, and I hadn't even started playing my bowls yet, and he just started crying. And he was like, I'm sorry. I was like, no, like, let it come out. Like, this is good. And then I eventually did start playing my bowls, and he ended up having to leave after about 15 minutes of it because he couldn't stop. I mean, it was hard crying. And come to find out, he had not cried in 10 years. It was like, it was over a decade. I know. And it was like all of the pieces were in place for that because, he was detoxing from whatever substances he was numbing himself with. And just being in that simple state of laying and receiving, and like you were saying, slowing down and being with the body, it was like all of that just came right to the surface. I don't have chills everywhere.
Yeah.
And he was able to get that emotion out and have a really big, powerful release. And I think about him all the time because I didn't really get to talk to him after, and I wish that I had had an exchange with him. But that sticks out to me most. And then there's lots of other really cool stories along the way too. But
it's a really fulfilling line of work that you found yourself in. And I know, and you and I have chatted about this, and I hear it a lot, and I've coached women in the spiritual, what I call like spiritual entrepreneurship realm, where they're like, I can't charge much for that, or I'm never going to make much in this industry. Like, I'm here to help people, and I can't, and the struggle, the power play dynamic between doing good and, making an impact on others and receiving monetary value for that exchange, right? So I want to chat with you a little bit about that because I'm curious, if you had those doubts going into this. Like, did you think to yourself, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have to make some sacrifices in my life? Or did you think, I'm going to do this and?
Well, it's funny because I started getting into it while I had my first day job, and I was working in PR, and it was very cushy. It was like, and at that point, I kind of, being a broke as a joke musician in New York, it was like, you can either be broke as a joke and a musician and following your thing, or you can have a day job and be, in that machine. And so when I finally went through the process of getting certified and went through all my training and was like feeling so out of alignment with that job, it was like everything just was like, it built up to the point where I was like, I have to go. Like, there's no, like, the universe is like pushing me off the ledge right now. And so I leaned into knowing that I could like hustle, and also learning so many tools from that PR job of like how to pitch myself and how to just like, it was a really great career for me to be able to put some pieces in, because I've always had a really big drive and, very motivated. And then to add the skill set that I learned from the PR as far as just like reaching out to people, like some of those things that feel so difficult to do. I was forced to do it for 5 years for all these other health and wellness people. And then it was like, oh, I could just pitch myself. Like I could just do that for me. So I felt like, at least at first, I was like, I definitely didn't think I would be able to get where I am now. at all. There was no vision of all the things that have happened. There's no way I could have like planned it. But I did have this underlying faith of like, you know what, like if I'm not making a ton of money and at least I'm doing what I want to be doing. And that to me is more important than making the money and feeling like I'm out of alignment.
Yeah.
So I did struggle with charging for a bit and I still struggle with that, I think, in certain ways. You know, I do feel like I always want to like hook people up with discounts and like, especially with the crystal bowls that I sell, they're very expensive. And I'm like, I am going to give this person 10% off because I'm allowed to do 10%. That's the most they'll let me. If they would let me do more, I probably would because I want to make all of this stuff accessible.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, yeah, at a certain point, I started being like, okay, people are coming to me more. So with just supply and demand, I could like start to raise my prices. And I did eventually, I am a lot more comfortable talking money and asking for it. And if they can't, then I can work with their budget sometimes. Sometimes I can't. And I refer to students of mine, mentees or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
It always is. The best stories are filled with all the twists and turns. And you've managed to go from kind of like where I see a lot of people get stuck is like the one-to-one limited, you know, even small group experiences. And then you've managed to kind of get in the, playing field with all these larger corporations as well that hire you to come and be part, lead experiences and whatnot. I'm thinking in particular like Soho House. And I know you mentioned you've done some stuff with Lululemon. And so did you specifically say, I'm going to make myself, I'm going to call it corporate palpable? Like, did you say, I'm going to create some offers that I think are going to like speak to the corporate world and try to get my foot in there? Or how did that evolve? Did it just kind of happen?
Well, Soho House took, that one took, as soon as I found out there was a Soho House opening in Nashville, this is in 2022, I immediately was trying to figure out how I could find someone who works there to pitch this to them. And that was like, I remember it was in like February and I don't think I heard from anyone. I mean, it took so much follow-up and just persistence and like towing the line of like, am I being annoying right now? Like, I know you guys are like in the middle of opening and the last thing you're thinking about is like, let's have a sound bath. Like you have bigger fish to fry right now. But that one took so much effort and it ended up paying off so well. Like that's been one of my biggest, just as far as like clout, I think, it's a really cool place to be able to host them. They do really well. They're sold out every time.
They sell out every time.
Yeah, which is like incredible. I don't know what we're doing, but it's working. And it opens the door for me to meet so many people. And that's actually how I got the TikTok gig was a woman who was coming to my sound baths at Soho House was like, hey, love your sound baths at Soho House. I want to do some stuff with TikTok this year. Like, let's schedule out a whole thing. And so, I mean, corporate's always like the goal for people because that's where people have more budget to be able to play with. So there definitely is, there's a hustle with that as well. Just because there's no, there's DNCs. I always want to say DMC, but it's DNCs. There's also a place like Book with Eva. There's different places that you can kind of like connect with that can connect you. Like Rosa, Rosa, she's had me come on and do some corporate stuff with her. So just having those relationships and knowing that it takes time. It's not like you can just be like, oh, I'm going to create a corporate offer and then put it out there and then everyone's going to come flocking to you, I think so much of it really is the outreach and the connecting and being
relationship
persistent.
Building.
Yeah.
And the follow-up and the persistence.
And the follow-up.
Yes. And it's such a good point. I mean, I lead a program called Make That Money, Honey, but a lot of it is when you are enrolled, you get to see that so much of it is based on the authentic relationships that are required if you want to make your life as an entrepreneur easier.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're back having to like go fishing every single day, right, into a brand new pond. It's like, no, let's just nurture the relationships we have. And I think with what you're saying, it's similar, right? Like
totally.
So important. So I love that. I love that. And, you know, every door can kind of lead to the next and the next opportunity. And
right. And that's what I was saying. Like, I never could have predicted the path. It just kind of like has kept opening. The doors have kept opening, and I've just walked through them every time. I'm like, okay, here I am.
Here we
trusting
go. Let's
this.
do
Let's
this.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Which does
and
require,
I don't say no to much. So
which does require that like open mindset, right? Not to get so fixated that like my work has to look like this or else.
Yeah.
I think that's really important too.
Absolutely.
Speaking of,
yeah,
you've also now started teaching others in the healing space how to make it their business and make it their primary income, which is really cool. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, after I graduated from the Sound Healing Academy with my diploma in 2021 and left my day job, I basically pitched myself to the academy. I was like, hey, so I'm going to be doing this full time now. Like, I would love to, if you guys ever have any available positions, I would love to do that. And they were like, actually, yeah, we would love to interview you for a tutor role. And so I started as a tutor with them, which really just means they have a whole online, and this is with the International Sound Healing Academy. They're based in the UK. And so they have people from all over the world who sign up and just do their online trainings. And part of that is you get connected with an online tutor. So I did that for a while. And then the next year they wanted me to be a teacher, which meant leading the workshops in person and teaching. And that terrified the crap out of me because I was like, I mean, I've taught piano lessons to like one person. Like, the idea of being in a room full of people looking at me, me teaching something, like, it was so overwhelming. And so terrifying, and I didn't want to do it. And I remember, like, I just had all of these, like, it was so much fear coming up, and I kept being like, oh my gosh, how do I tell them, like, I didn't ask for this, like, I didn't sign up for it, like, they just told me that's what I was going to start doing, and like, I'm not ready. And anyway, I ended up teaching my first workshop. I was so nervous, and it ended up being like the most fun weekend, hanging out with these people. We all like, you get to be creating a situation where people with this shared interest are coming together. Some of them are like, I don't know why I'm here. I'm like a stay-at-home mom, and like I just went to a sound bath, and like here I am. And then you have the people who are like, I have a yoga business, and like I'm adding this in, and somehow like it all just turns into this group of people, and we all become besties, and like it's really fun. And so, yeah, that was in 2022. I started doing that. And through that, I teach about 10 workshops a year. Wow. 2 of them are online via Zoom. And then there's like 8 in person.
I feel like that would be more challenging with what you do.
Oh my gosh. Zoom is not my favorite.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky. You got to have the right audio equipment to make it sound right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been doing it now for 2 years, the teaching, and that's been really incredible. And, then people have wanted to work with me after their training is done to help them kind of build their business, because there's so much, as you know, with building a business. And like, people, I think, have a tendency, especially in like the spiritual world, of like racking up certifications and thinking that like it's all just going to fall into place if they just get enough certifications. And I fell into that a little bit with like, okay, Reiki and the crystal, and like, wanting to feel that confidence and that structure there. Yeah. But there's so much more to like, just the annoying business stuff of like the LLC and like the business license and the sales tax that I have to pay because I sell things. And just all of the back end stuff, and just even just like the flow. And it took me time, because I actually didn't work with a mentor until this year. And at this point, it's less about building the business from the ground floor and more about, really elevating to the next level, which has been really great for me. But yeah, just all of those back end stuff, being able to help people get some of that organized is really helpful.
And us,
I learned all the lessons. So
she's like, I learned all the hard way.
Share.
Same. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. And I'm grateful for people like you, because I don't really like to teach the beginning part anymore. Like, that was so long ago for me, to be honest, that it's hard for me to even remember all of the granular components. And now I can just like whip up a new business tomorrow and not really think about it.
I love it.
So, I'm on my 5th business. So look, I know how to do it, but I don't like to teach it. I like to get to the part where like you already have the business off the ground and we need to like make it sustainable and, marketing and money and operations and team and growth and all that. That's where I thrive.
Yeah, well, that's what I need. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan of your podcast.
I love that stuff. Well, speaking of, if you had to look back at, because I always think, people ask me this and I'm like, gosh, I don't know. But if you had to look back and think about those earlier days, or maybe not even earlier days, maybe it could be recent days, but just like one particular part that felt really challenging or was like a lesson that you felt like you had to learn the hard way. Does anything come to mind?
I mean, business flow wise, I wish that I had set up a Stripe account and started charging people in advance instead of thinking that that was going to be a barrier for them to book me. Because I had no shows after cleaning my entire house and like getting my space ready for a one-to-one session, and they just don't come. And some of those things that I just, in my scarcity mindset, was like, no, if I have to make them pay first, then they're going to see that and then they're going to get scared. And then, then there was always the awkward, like after we just had this like amazing
now you've
session, I'm like, okay, so do you want to Venmo me? Or like, can you pay me now after we just did this?
Yeah.
So definitely wish I had done that before.
Yep.
And I think another challenge, being in the teaching world is, I'm saturating my own markets that I do this in, and just always never doubting the fact that there is going to be a support, that it's okay if I'm teaching people how to do what I do and telling them all the secrets, because there's part of you as someone who does this, I'm sure, that like wants to gatekeep certain things. Or
sure.
Like, no, like, that's my thing. But like really trusting that like if I just lead from the heart and am open and helpful and sharing as much as I can, that it's going to pay off in the end. Yeah. And that's always something that I have to remind myself, still. Yeah. Is not getting caught up in the stuff. I just taught a level 2 workshop at the beginning of this month, and there's 14 new people that are going through who are like already like, how do I make this my business? And I'm like, all right, slow down. But also like, I got to always trust that like there's plenty of demand for this work and opportunity for everyone.
Yeah. I think anyone listening can relate to that in any industry. And I think it's such important inner work to do to get to the point where you can truly, truly trust that no one is you.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you taught them everything from A to Z, no one is you.
Absolutely. And especially in this work and there's the woo-woo side of it of like, your vibe will attract your tribe kind of thing, where it's like people are going to be drawn to the way that you do it. Because, I had all these students who, they were like, what exactly do you say at the beginning? Like, what is your script? Like, share your script. And like, what's the first notes? And like, basically wanting to just carbon copy what I do, because that is what works for me. And it's like, I can tell you all day what I do, but at the end of the day, like, you got to do you. Like, this is your medicine that you're offering. This is your magic that you're bringing into the room, that I can't tell you how to be you. You got to do it. So, and it's funny because I hear myself telling them those things that I tell myself too,
Yep. Always. The teacher is always the student. Always, always.
Absolutely.
I have a good friend who says the best, and I think this has been validated by lots of people, but he always reminds me that the best way to learn is to teach.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
So true. Yeah. So true. Around here, we use this phrase, soft CEO era, that I'm in my soft CEO era. And this is born from years. I think it was in 2017 when I first started tracking my overcoming burnout journey, girl boss too hard, and wanted to slow down. And that's when I enrolled in my own yoga teacher training and really changed a lot of things in my life and my business. But, for the last year or so, we've started calling it our soft CEO era. And for us, that really means continuing to move forward in alignment of our dreams and our purpose and our vision, but not at the expense of our health and our well-being and our relationships, right? Yes. So really balancing things out. And before we started recording, you You and I were chatting about what you did over the weekend. So I would love to know, as a fellow high achiever, I see you, I get it. And I did a little work this weekend too, so I'm not judging. But it's so, so important that we're mindful about our output of energy and our pouring back into ourselves in ways not related to the bottom line of the business. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel like you embody your soft CEO, or do you want to say like, I'm going to do it more and this is what I intend to do?
Weakness. Yes. It is hard for me to do that. I think there's some programming, honestly, from childhood. Like, I'm very much my dad's daughter, and my dad was like the hustle king. Like, all he did was work. And I saw that, and like, one of the things, if my sisters listen to this, they will laugh, and also like a tear will roll down their eye of like, in the morning, especially like the summers, the weekends, time to get up. It's time to be productive. If you don't have a list of things you need to get done, I'll make one for you. It was like that kind of thing. And like, my dad is like he's not like the most chill, but we're very good friends. He's like my best friend. Mm-hmm. But that was the mindset. And that's what I saw with him. It was like always working and like always doing. And what did you do to be productive today? Mm-hmm. And so I know that is a place for improvement for me, and I've gotten a little better with it just this year. And one of my good friends, Joanna Barbera, who's also a spiritual entrepreneur, I did a program with her a few years ago, and one of the things she said that I thought that just stuck with me was she was talking about how when she goes out in nature, that's where she feels the most inspiration, that's where she gets all these downloads, like that's vital for her. Mm-hmm. And so she started framing that as like, no, part of my job is to go to the waterfall this week. Part of my job is to do this thing, to fill my cup. Yeah. And that, for better or for worse, framing it as it's work.
I do the same thing.
Makes me be able to do it. Like even getting massages, like I get them fairly regularly. That's my thing to fill up. Mm-hmm. That to me is part of my job, and I could definitely improve still, because again, like you asked me what I did this weekend. I was like, actually I had the weekend off, and I'm like, well, I did have a gig, and then
she rattled off all of the
create a bunch of content, and I worked on my course, but I did have dinner with friends.
Which is good. I know it's hard to unplug, and I do the same thing. And I'll tell my clients like, we're gonna create CEO Fridays, and a CEO Friday means, what does the CEO of this business need to do in order to be the best leader? And if that means you need to go get a massage today, that's what you do as the CEO of this business today. And if it means you need to go sit and like reflect on the next quarter and the upcoming game plan, that can be your CEO Friday. And if it means you just check out and you're with your little one or your partner or whomever, that's your CEO Friday. But giving ourselves permission to reframe what it means to be quote unquote productive, and to be the boss and to be the leader and to be, making moves in the right direction is really at the heart of what the soft CEO era is all about for me. Like when I, started using that phrase over a year ago, it wasn't about like softening and not doing anything. It was about only doing what mattered and leaving the rest. Yeah.
Well, I think there's also this, because even like when I hear soft CEO, there's like part of me that like contracts a little, because I'm like, no, like it's hard. Yeah. Like it has to be hard if you're doing it right, like, and that was, part of a mentality of like, I have to work really hard in order to do this. Because again, that's what I saw my dad do. It was like, he didn't have income streams other than he had to show up and be at the gig and be with the students. And like, so I've been really trying to like set myself up to have more, like I am working on a course now and hoping that will kind of like give me a little more space for passive income. Yeah. Because so much of what I do, it does require me to be, it requires me to show up. And as much as I love doing that, it also, I'm trying to like start a family before too long and need to set myself up to be able to do all of that. So the way that I've set it up until more recently, it's like, there's there's no space for that.
Yeah,
So I got to figure
realize,
it out.
oh, this isn't actually sustainable. So
Right.
what can I do about it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've had to do that too. And I had someone, Mike Zeller, if you're listening, call me out on that one time over coffee. He was like, I keep hearing the word hard. I was like, oh, darn it. You're right. Like I've always been like, let it be easy. It can be easy. We can be successful and abundant and filled with joy and, you know, at the top of our game, and it can be easy. And that is a complete like reframe that I'm still working on to this day. When I catch myself thinking or saying, oh, this is so hard. It's like, nope, actually, nope. How do I make it easy? You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there's like, if it's not hard, like, do we deserve it? And I think that's a part that comes to me where I'm like, do I even deserve it? Like, this month has been my highest income month, and a lot of that's from the level 2 I did, which honestly, that was really hard because I was extremely feeling awful and lost my voice. It was kind of a nightmare, very hard. But it's given me, you know, I went on vacation right after. I've been a lot more spacious this month. But then I'm like, it's been interesting because like you would think if I had this big month that I would feel this like, the angels are singing the bird, you know, whatever, like I'm floating on cloud 9. And instead I'm like, is that it? Like, I guess that was easier, but like also I should be working harder and I could be making even more still. It's been interesting. Yeah. I was talking to my friend Joanna about it the other day, just that part of it. She was like, well, it's interesting because like, you know, that's also showing you like money isn't everything. Like it doesn't buy that feeling of euphoria that you think it might.
No, it definitely doesn't. And I think, so over the weekend, I did less work than you. And
good for you.
And I did yoga and I made cookies and I watched this old Marilyn Monroe documentary about what really happened, the truth behind, I forget what it's called. It's on Netflix. And, you know, any story like that you watch will really give you that perspective shift. So after I watched it, I thought about what you just said. Like, it doesn't matter how much success you have. You could be at the height of your life. She was at the height of her career and miserable, right? And also in kind of a precarious situation. And, you know, whatever you choose to believe about the death behind her, it's like, no matter what was happening, it was a sad time in her life.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder, like if you're ever feeling like, oh, I just need just one more sale, just one more launch, just get me to this level, this 10K, 20K, whatever. And then I'll be happy. It's like, look around at all the really, really wealthy people who are very unhappy and ask yourself, maybe I need to look a little deeper.
Yeah. It's been really interesting because, that was something that just came up like this weekend for me.
Yeah.
Of like, wow, I never thought I always like having a month like this that it would just feel so different than it does. And it's like, oh no, there's still the same part of me that's like, well, how do I get it to 30K?
Yeah.
Like, how do I get to 40?
You just keep moving the marker.
Yeah, exactly. The goal just keeps moving further and further out. And like, I think there's so much to be said for like celebrating it. So that's what I'm trying to do this month.
So that's what you're going to do this weekend?
Yes.
Actually,
I do have another, I will say part, and this is like my own excuse, is like so much of the work that I do is at night and on weekends. So like I don't usually have weekends off. That's usually when I have the most sound bath bookings because that's when people are like, oh, for the retreat or like the, you know, all those things. So my weekdays are actually that's when I'm doing things like working on my course and creating the content and like taking the calls and all of that stuff. But what was I even saying about all of that?
When
I know
you're
that was my excuse. You're
going to celebrate. That was your excuse, but you're going to celebrate.
That I actually have this weekend, unless someone books something this weekend, then I'm going to take some time to actually like celebrate. And, you know, I did just go on a vacation, but it was very busy and with my family, like I was visiting family.
It's so important that you celebrate the milestones because otherwise...
What's the point?
What's the point? What's the point? And you're just going to run out of steam eventually. Yeah. You know, I've seen it happen a lot. I've been there.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes. So you can obviously find me on the internet. You can find me at KayceLaine.com. You can find out about my trainings that I'm doing, any upcoming ones in Nashville. I've got other ones in different areas of the U.S. that I do. And also, I have one more Zoom one before the end of the year. So if you're not nearby and want to learn about sound healing, hit me up. That's also where you can learn more about buying crystal bowls, because that's actually the biggest part of what I do is selling bowls, which is really fun. it's a whole thing. It's a whole process. But I show you how to shop smarter for that kind of thing. And then I have my course that I'm really excited about putting out this fall called Music Theory for Sound Healers, where it really brings in my music background and sound healing, and can dive into some of those things that I, don't have time to get into in a weekend training because it's a lot. So finding all that out there. Also Instagram, I'm very active there. So those are kind of the two
at Kayce
main
Laine.
spots. At Kayce Laine, yeah.
We'll put all that in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
I love it. Well, thank you for being so honest and open and vulnerable with me about this conversation, and sharing a little bit of light on the journey for everyone listening. And it's really important for us to always know that where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be, and that it's this or more, right? Like, you're going to continue to have experiences and evolve and grow, and it's really cool to see it all. You embody all of that.
Oh, well, it's funny. On the way here, I was thinking about just the title of the podcast, and I was like, that's like such a perfect way to kind of like put it in a box. It's like, this or more. And thinking about where I started and not knowing that it could be as much more as it has been, and just trusting that. So very cool. Exciting. Thank you so much for having me. This was
Thank you for
fun.
being here.
You made it easy to be vulnerable. So there we go.
Thank you.